Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
This is Bloomberg Businessweek with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
Music's calling and we got to get down to swing down. We've been working so
All right, everybody. Yep. We are working so hard, no doubt about it, here at the U.S. Open. Look at everybody's looking at me like, wait, you are working so hard?
To be fair, I think they do this on purpose. They put us somewhere where we can't actually watch any tennis from here.
I know.
So we don't get distracted. What I can see is there are probably some really good matches going on because there are a lot of people courtside right now.
That's one of the stadium courts, right?
No.
No?
That is.
Oh, no, that's a field court?
That is just a.
It's a practice court.
No, it's not a practice court. Practice courts are right there.
Okay.
There's a match going on right there. But you bring up a really good point about what's unique about the U.S. Open.
Because you can
go watch. I mean, 2 years ago when we were sitting here, I left. Because, you stayed the first night to watch Serena.
Yeah.
In her people thought could have been her final match.
Right, exactly.
I went over there and watched her practice.
Which is really cool.
Before she played.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
Or
very
maybe
cool.
it was
the night before.
I can't remember. Yeah.
It was. It's pretty amazing.
But it's cool. Like the boards are over there, and you get an idea of who's on some of these side courts, and you can just go and watch, and it's just fascinating to see.
The other part of this is the athletes just walking by you.
Yeah.
So pro tennis players. Yeah. Typically they're above average in height.
Yeah, they're pretty tall dudes.
They're carrying around
or women.
Carrying around bags of like a dozen tennis rackets. You can kind of tell.
They carry that's what they do. They carry their own equipment.
Oh, yeah.
I love that.
They walk amongst us.
They do. And someone who really knows about this world. She's an athlete. She's represented athletes in negotiating deals. You'll know some of the names she has represented. She's now helping others, including non-athletes, really perform, Tim, at their best.
Let's get to our guest, Molly Fletcher. She's the founder and CEO of the talent development company Game Changer Performance Group. She's got a new book out. It's called Dynamic Drive, the Purpose-Fueled Formula for Sustainable Success. It's coming out this week.
It is coming out this week, and she joins us from Atlanta. And her notes remind us she was a walk-on tennis star at Michigan State. She and her mom actually won enough U.S. qualifying matches to play doubles at the U.S. Open in 1991. I can imagine what a great memory that is. Molly, welcome to Bloomberg Businessweek. Great to have you. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I'm jealous. You guys have, golly, I want to be where you are. So soak it all in for me.
Listen, we wish you were here. It's really kind of perfect today. The weather has settled down. It's not too hot. There's something about top-notch athletes that can teach us so much about yourself, how to do things, how to approach things. I feel like we talk to coaches, athletes, we learn so much. What have you learned being an athlete and representing them?
Absolutely. For almost 20 years, I was a sports agent. And so I had an opportunity to see so early in my career. I mean, it was sort of a front row seat to peak performance. And what I saw is that at the end of their careers, the things that gave them the most satisfaction was actually not the trophies, right? It wasn't the rings on their fingers, but it was at some level the knowledge that they left it all out there for where you are. They left it all out on the court. They gave it everything they had. And so, the book that I have coming out next week, Dynamic Drive, it is all about how do we align our pursuits and our outcomes at some level in service of who are we becoming in the pursuit? Who are we becoming in the journey? As much as the achievements, the trophies, the outcomes, right? When we think about the guy or the gal that's about to hoist a trophy over their head after winning the Open, I think when you see those tears of joy, it's anchored more in the pursuit than in fact the achievement itself.
How do you then, so interesting that you say that. I think about that with amateur athletes too, who, might work a full-time job, but they also have athletic goals. And maybe those athletic goals that they have, they don't achieve. But what they did was they trained for that marathon. They trained for that 100-mile bike race. They might not have finished it in the time that they wanted to, but maybe it was the training leading up to that experience that actually is fulfilling.
100%. I mean, I think sometimes when we think about, drive is such an amazing thing, right? Like the drive to run a marathon, the drive to achieve something. It's such an awesome thing, and it's amazing. But to me, so much of why I'm so passionate about dynamic drive, as I define it, is because our lives are so transformative. They're so dynamic, right? At some level. In other words, it's not about reaching the summit or finishing or running that marathon, per se, to your point. And, because at some level, the interesting thing is, what do you do when you're done? Right? Like, you guys probably see it and have seen it. And I know I saw it as a sports agent. I mean, when you finish the marathon, when you win the US Open, when you win a world championship, what do you do next? And if you're in the pursuit of better every day, if you're working on your mindset, if you're working inside of discipline and resilience, and you're anchoring all of it in something bigger, right? A bigger why at some level, to me, it makes the journey worth the grind. And it's what I saw with that.
So what do you do, Molly? So what do you do? Like, how do you work with someone, or how do you train someone? I think you and I sometimes will feel like we'll come off of something and it's like so great, and then you got to remember that.
But there's the flip side of that too, where
What?
we come off of something and you're like, you know what, it could have been a lot better, and here's why.
Right. So how do you?
Like, we're pretty harsh critics of ourselves.
Absolutely. So how do you get your mindset to be like, okay, all right, maybe that was a bad one, or so how do we make it better, or how do we not let that kind of throw us off course?
Well, and you hit on it right there with that word mindset, because it's everything, right? And you guys see it out there on the courts right there. I mean, the difference between the guys and gals that are competing and continuing to make progress is so often, right? It's their mindset. It's not talent. It is at some level that gets them there, but it's the discipline and the resilience and the mindset that keeps them winning. And so, to your question, I mean, I think, we have like something like 70,000 thoughts a day, which is kind of insane when you think about it, right? And so if we aren't intentional about reframing our thoughts, right? Like really intentional about saying, am I telling myself something right now that is taking me where I want to go? Or am I telling myself something that isn't, right? And so I teach something in Dynamic Drive called a total mindset reset, which is how do we recognize when we're telling ourselves something that isn't going to take us where we want to go, or give us the outcome, or make us show up as the best version of ourselves. How can I recognize that? How can I then replace it with something different and better that in fact is driving toward the outcome that we want? And then how do I reinforce it, right? You see athletes, I've certainly got the open on, right? You see athletes looking at notebooks, right? And cards, and they're getting their mind right and reinforcing the kind of self-talk they need when they're out on the court.
What is that self-talk, and how can we take what they do on the court and apply it to our own lives when it comes to either professionally or personally?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Dynamic Drive has 7 keys to it, right, that I unpack in detail. Of course, it's all foundationally anchored in purpose. But I would say the first step fundamentally is saying, where am I playing small in my life, right? Like, where am I maybe not showing up in a way that aligns with the legacy that I want to leave? And that was really what got me to this point right now, which is pulling back and saying, do I want to be an agent and negotiate $2 billion, $3 billion, $5 billion in contracts? What am I chasing, right? So I think to answer your question, it's pulling back and saying, where am I playing small? Where could I have an opportunity to level up a little bit in service of the legacy I want to leave, in service of what I want on my tombstone, right? In service of me showing up both personally and professionally and living into my core values. And then I think we have to say, what am I really chasing, right? I think sometimes in life, whether you're a stay-at-home parent, whether you're a pastor, whether you're a professional tennis player, whether you're a media talent like you, it's pulling back and saying, what am I chasing, right? Like, at some level, what is all of this for, and who am I becoming as a result of the pursuit? And those kinds of questions are
because
Yeah.
this world could,
Those are tough. Those are the
this
tough
world
questions.
could drive you a little crazy, and sometimes you're
Yeah.
not your best you, or maybe I feel like that. I'm not my best me sometimes because it makes you a little crazy. Hey, Molly, one thing we do want to ask you, and love hearing kind of your perspective on how to help people be their best, if you will. You mentioned 20 years representing 300 plus of the world's top NFL, MLB, NBA, NCAA athletes, coaches. So Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Aaron Andrews, I could go on and on and on. What was the fun part of that, the good part of that? What was the maybe not so fun part of it? And why did you stop?
Yeah, awesome question. And, I mean, the fun part is being around peak performers, right? Being around people who live into and want to pursue better every day, right? That have the kind of mindset and resilience and discipline. And that was and is so magnetic and so fulfilling and so fun. In service of your second
Is there
part of your
anybody in
question-
particular? Is there anybody though in particular that stands out that you were just like, oh my God, they're just on a different plane?
John Smoltz was a pitcher for the Atlanta Braves. To me, he got it from the perspective that he would step out on the mound and give it all he had all the time. He wasn't afraid of change. It wasn't really about him. It was about the other guys in the clubhouse. More than him, right? And I think, Ernie Johnson Jr., you guys know EJ's name, given the work that you do. I mean, just, we'd go from the set where he's between Kenny and Barkley, right? And then we'd get in a minivan and drive to go have lunch with his since passed son, Michael, who was severely disabled, and have lunch, and EJ would rub his head and feed Michael. And, so I think it's the people that recognize the opportunity and the uniqueness of it, and also recognize the blessings in it, and at some level don't get too self-absorbed in their sort of in the seat that they're in. And you guys see it there, right? Like, it's easy to do that when everywhere you turn, everybody stands up and moves and follows you, right? And so Smoltzy, EJ, Doc Rivers, Tom Izzo, these are people, and the list goes on and on and on, but they're great human beings who obviously had unbelievable careers too.
In terms of the stuff that maybe wasn't so fun being an agent and why you stopped.
Yeah. Oh, I was hoping you'd forget that part of the question, girl, and you're back with it.
I know. I said to Tim, I'm like, I want to follow up.
Yeah. I know. I was just so I would say the not so fun is when you the 11 o'clock call when a player gets traded and they didn't want to, the player that just gets up to the big leagues and then they get injured. The golfer that's right there and they're about to win their first tournament and they sort of don't get it done for whatever reason on the back nine on a Sunday. Those, because the love and the connection, I mean, these are people that you're at their weddings, right? You're there when their kids are born. And so when they're disappointed and their heart breaks or their family's heart breaks, man, that hurts. That hurts. And so I would say though that was the hardest part, truly. Or the other component I would actually say is the ones who had just an enormous amount of talent, but didn't have, candidly, what I break down in Dynamic Drive, the discipline, the resilience, the mindset. So they had all the talent, but talent isn't enough, right? Like, you need talent plus resilience, talent plus discipline plus mindset. So that was always sad to see at some level, the wasted talent, knowing the gap that existed. And, that's hard. That hurts your heart too.
Yeah, I could see that.
Very briefly, because we only have about 30 seconds left with you, Molly. What would you say to somebody who's feeling a little burned out right now? I'm not talking about a pro athlete, but somebody who's feeling just like really, really tired.
We actually have more time, I believe.
Do we?
We have like 2 minutes, so go ahead.
She wants to dig into this burnout question, man. That's what's really going on. I love it. Thanks for the extra 2 minutes. Here's what I would tell him. I would say burnout is usually a result of chasing the wrong things. In other words, it's putting your energy toward the things that don't matter to you, right? So And when we operate into dynamic drive, because the foundation is that we're plugged into our purpose in everything that we do, burnout is actually at bay. In other words, for somebody who's feeling burned out, what I would encourage them to do, pull back and do, is ask themselves some tough questions, right? What am I chasing? What matters most to me? What legacy do I want to leave? What at some level are the things, the people, the relationships, the values, the beliefs that are most important to me? And how am I living and pouring my energy into those things in service of creating alignment and in turn offsetting burnout?
Yeah.
Because I think where people find themselves burned out is they're misaligned, right? Like they're misaligned. In other words, they're spending
Agreed.
their time and energy. Yeah, right? Totally. I'm glad to,
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
it's spending your time and energy doing things that don't ladder up to what in fact matters most to you. And so that's why I'm so passionate about this approach to drive and to life. And at some level, what can become really an identity in which we approach our lives, because it keeps burnout at bay.
No.
It doesn't focus on the competition. It's an inside out approach to living our lives in fullness without regret and leaving the legacy that we really want to leave.
No, it's a deeper think and thought, as you said, mindset, and just thinking about, right, when we all ultimately will leave this world, like how you leave it, right? And do you feel kind of good on the way out, to be quite
That's all you got.
No, I think about
Those
this a lot as I get
relationships.
older. Molly Fletcher, thank you so much for all this time. Founder and Chief Executive Officer at Changer Performance Group. And of course, her new book is called Dynamic Drive.